What's up, y'all? Welcome to Flames Reaction Channel. Now, today's video, I'm going to react the Terror Squad. So with that being said, make sure you hit that like, comment, and subscribe, and let's dig into this documentary of Terror Squad.
He was telling me I got to deal with Atlantic, and he was pushing my product, and he was talking to me in the business ends, and we were sharing time with our kids. We get together, so it was deeper than that.
At the end of the 20th century, hip-hop group Terror Squad was poised to become one of the most promising crews in rap music history. Headed by Fat Joe and featuring a ton of Latino MCs from the Bronx like Cuban Link, Armageddon, Prospect, and Triple C's, the roster of this talented bunch would fluctuate over the years, but the crown jewel was most definitely Big Pun. Short for Big Punisher, the first Latino artist to ever go platinum with his debut solo album, Capital Punishment. Unfortunately, not long after the release of the group's debut album, Big Pun, well, he passed away as a result of poor health. This would result in the future of the Terror Squad being thrown into upheaval. After years of infighting between its other members, particularly Fat Joe and Cuban Link, Terror Squad simply disappeared into the ether as its members began to focus on their own solo careers. But how did Cuban Link end up with a knife slash to the face, and what did Fat Joe have to do with it? If you know what happened, fill us in down below. Everybody else, keep watching our newest episode of Where Are They Now?
Snap your W-2 and file Fed and State for free.
My apologies, everybody. These avatars, man. Advertisement, I'm sorry.
As popular as they were at their height, it's kind of remarkable
man.
that hip-hop group Terror Squad has only ever released 2 studio albums. When Terror Squad first came together in 1998, both Big Pun and Fat Joe were 2 of the biggest Latino rappers around. And I mean that both literally and metaphorically. No fat shaming, though. Nothing like that.
So he's rhyming like the pun, we know that, and then out of nowhere he said, snatch the moon out the sky and blow the sun away. Me and my playing hardball, strictly hard. I was like, oh my God, get in the car.
These 2 grew up in the Bronx, and around the same time that Wu-Tang Clan became a breakthrough hit group. They decided to link up and see if that they could find that same level of success. At that point, Big Pun had just scored a massive hit with his single, Still Not a Player. Meanwhile, Fat Joe had been grinding away creating major label gangsta rap albums since '93 with titles like Represent and Jealous One's Envy. With those 2 acting as the headliners, Terror Squad would fill out the rest of its ranks with fellow Bronx MCs like Cuban Link, Armageddon, Prospect, Triple C's, and singer Tony Sunshine. The crew would debut on a Fat Joe album, which was released in 1998. While the majority of the roster popped up on separate tracks, Joe would bring everybody together for the single, The Hidden Hand. About a year later is when Terror Squad would drop their self-titled debut album with the help of Atlantic Records. Unfortunately, quite surprisingly, it never spawned a major hit. I said unfortunately like it was the name of the album, sorry. Despite that, the collective was still extremely popular, especially for their live performances, and they most definitely did their best to live up to their name. For example, at one point in 1998, soon after their formation, the band was invited to perform at the Puerto Rican Day Parade in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Once they got to the venue, Fat Joe says that they were treated like kings, but then things took a turn. During their rendezvous in Connecticut, the Terror Squad found themselves in hot water when Cuban Link offered to buy a drink for local kingpin Frankie the Terminator's wife. After the mobster accused Cuban Link of cozying up to his girl, Link would then wind up punching the mobster in the face, which sparked an all-out brawl that left Terror Squad greatly outnumbered.
I'm like, yo, bro, I'm talking him off the cliff because he looked like he want to let this thing go because Cuban snuffed him. That's how the whole shit happened. I don't lie when, so he punched the guy, but he got his feet up. Like 10,000 dudes on one, and nobody was pussy with us. Everybody was the realest we had to offer.
Somehow, everyone survived the brawl when one of the crew members pulled out a firearm, which sent gangsters running. Now, that should give you a taste of the inner dynamics of this group, and how, from more or less the beginning, not everybody was on the same page. And ultimately, that would be what would tear them apart. Terror Squad's demise begins and ends with the health of Big Pun. Now, he always was something of a gigantic man. I mean, how else do you think he got his name?
I was into that sports. I was like this. I was pretty fit. I was at the time, so I was sports teams. My first dream was really rapping. Like Triple H was like He was usually the captain too.
Unfortunately, all that extra weight he was carrying around would eventually catch up with him. Already weighing in as much as 400 pounds at the time of the release of Capital Punishment, Pun's stature would explode to nearly 800 pounds by 1999. And even though he would make a concentrated effort to lose weight, dropping as much as 100 pounds, it was too little too late. In February of 2000, Big Pun would drop dead of a heart attack. He was only 28 years old.
They say that, yes, Big Pun was a big man in size, but he was also, more importantly, a big talent with an even bigger soft spot for the Bronx.
This would essentially bring Terror Squad to an end. The group just didn't know it yet. But the major problem that would ensure that this group would never rebound was the developing beef between Fat Joe and Cuban Link. Cuban was brought in the Terror Squad by Big Pun, and Pun was always intended for Cuban to follow in his footsteps. However, after Big Pun passed and Fat Joe began to take control of the Terror Squad, many of Joe's business practices began rubbing Link the wrong way. In fact, Cuban Link had stated that Fat Joe basically shelved what was supposed to be Link's debut studio album, 24K. And after that happened, Link approached Joe and asked for his release from Terror Squad. Link got what he wanted, but then he felt like he was blacklisted from the industry at Joe's request. He told MTV, "A lot of people shied away from the situations as far as getting my deal after the situation with Fat Joe. They chose not to deal with me. I never got my fair chance to put my mark out there like I should have." Furthering all this tension was a nightclub altercation that turned deadly. Back in the spring of 2001, Cuban Link would wind up getting his face slashed during a brawl at Jimmy's Bronx Cafe.
That Joe was back behind the stage. So now I'm getting off the stage and I see Joe. It's like, what's up? So he was already with a face, like. So I slapped him in the ass. I said, all right.
Cuban says that at the time of the attack, he was just trying to break up a fight between Fat Joe and rapper Son Kiss. That's when Fat Joe turned on him like a heel in a wrestling match. Cuban Link told MTV, "Next thing you know, he turns around and snuffs me. So-called brother. I had 10 years in the game with him. What's this?" So I get back up and it was over. All the memories we had was gone from my body. I rock his jaw, he wobbles backwards, and his security started holding me. Then somebody came from the back with a blade and rocked me. In the ensuing aftermath, Joe publicly denied having anything to do with Cuban getting slashed across the face. From that point forward, these two would be bitter enemies and have seldom let an opportunity to go by in which they don't talk trash about one another. Eventually, Cuban Link was replaced in Terror Squad with a female MC, Remy Ma. At that point, the group had finally recorded their second studio album, True Story, and released it in July of 2004. The project would perform considerably better than the group's first effort, and produced one massive single that would go certified gold in Lean Back. That song would thrust Fat Joe back into the spotlight, and then Terror Squad more or less fell by the wayside as Joe concentrated on revitalizing his career and toning down his original gangsta image. Instead, he began collaborating with acts like Ashanti, R. Kelly, and Genuine, while only featuring former Terror Squad members on its lesser-known tracks. Over time, Fat Joe began to resuscitate the Terror Squad brand and even flirted with the idea of adding acts like DJ Khaled to the roster. But it was never something that really came to fruition. Joe would utilize the Terror Squad name one last time for the project, Terror Squad Presents DJ Khaled Listen, or I think it's pronounced Listen, and then retired the name. Oh, brings me back. You're gonna make me look so silly, but whatever, it's fine. Since Terror Squad dissembled in the mid-2000s, Cuban Link has moved on to fashion his own crew called the Cuban Link Cartel. When asked if there was any hope of a Terror Squad reunion, he told Hip Hop DX, "The Fat Joe situation ain't gonna ever be resolved. I can't do business with a man like that. I've seen his business practices before in the past, and it led us all to a ruined empire just by personal association. It's a feud that has continued to produce new content, even up until as recently as a few months ago when Cuban Link once more accused Fat Joe of something crazy. This time for snitching.
The only reason I'm not going to give Joe that smoke right now and post this paperwork is because I'm not sure if it's official or not. Troll baby, somebody help me out before I put this up in the community section because, I don't go."
The alleged documents that Link has produced suggest that Joe spoke with police regarding a murder from a few years back. But when Joe hopped on Instagram to discuss the matters, he suggested that the paperwork was entirely fabricated. Cuban Link isn't the only former Terror Squad member that has beef with Joe, and his apparent shady business dealings either. Both Remy Ma and Tony Sunshine would also one time or another accuse the man of withholding money that they were rightfully owed, although they would later claim that they had made peace with Joe once again.
My bad.
That's how you feel, man.
It's still one day stepping on Joe's good friend job.
Yeah.
Come on, Ram.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry. Save him, Ram.
Save him, bro.
body, Joe.
As for Triple C's, Prospect, and Armageddon, well, they all just kind of drifted into obscurity when their solo rap careers didn't wind up nearly as successful as the joint venture had been. So is this really the end of Terror Squad? As far as how we probably remember it, I'd say yes. But considering that Fat Joe more or less owns the branding, he could always dust it off whenever he sees fit. Will he? Well, that's another question for another time. After all, this is Where Are They Now? My name is Clyde Smith, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please take a moment to like and subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in another episode.
All right, folks, that's it for this video, and I'm out. Peace.